On the same day, I cleared their entire mortgage. My parents gave the house deed to my sister to keep it in the family and told me I was just the wallet. So I gave them 24 hours to respond to a lawsuit stamped with intent to seize assets. I remember standing in the kitchen, my hands still trembling from signing the final wire transfer. It was a bright Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight makes even old paint look golden. I had just finished paying off the last $74,000 on my parents' mortgage. 20 years of helping them with bills, repairs, and groceries. And now I had finally given them the gift I'd been saving for since college. A debt-free home. They cried. My mom hugged me so tight I almost cried too. My dad clapped me on the back and said, "You're a good son, Michael. You've made this family proud." That moment lasted all of 15 minutes. Later that afternoon, I walked into the living room to find them sitting at the table with my sister, Lauren, the golden child, the one who never had to lift a finger for anything. A notary sat across from them with a folder open. When I asked what was going on, my mom smiled like she'd been rehearsing it. "We're transferring the deed," she said calmly. "It's just a formality. We want to make sure the house stays in the family after we're gone." My stomach twisted. "You're transferring it to me?" I asked. Lauren laughed. "No, silly. To me. Mom and Dad thought it'd be best since you're single and don't have kids. This way, it'll stay in the family line." I just stood there. My mouth went dry. "But I paid off the mortgage. That's my money. I live here." My mom's tone changed. "You helped, Michael. You always said you wanted to help. You never bought the house." I could barely breathe. I'd been paying their mortgage directly for 5 years. Every single payment sent from my account. When I tried to argue, my dad cut me off. "You're making this ugly. We raised you. We let you live here rent-free all these years. Don't act like you're owed something." Then Mom said the line that will never leave me. "You were just the wallet, Michael. Don't confuse generosity with ownership." It was like being slapped across the face. I couldn't even look at her. I spent the rest of that day in my room, staring at the walls I'd painted myself. The house smelled like the wood polish I'd bought. My tools, my books, my memories. All of it suddenly felt foreign. The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope on my door. Inside was a letter from my sister. "You need to vacate within 24 hours. The house is legally mine now. If you refuse, I'll have to contact the police for trespassing." I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. When I asked my parents, my dad said quietly, "It's better this way. We don't want drama." By sunset, I was standing in the driveway with my suitcase and the dog leash in my hand, watching them close the door behind me. No goodbye. No remorse. Just silence. That night, I slept in my truck outside the hardware store where I worked. I didn't cry until morning, when I realized everything I'd built my life around had been erased in a single day. But 3 weeks later, when I handed them a thick envelope with my lawyer's letterhead, one stamped with a lawsuit filed in county court, I saw the first flicker of fear in their eyes. And that was just the beginning. I didn't grow up rich. We lived in a small 2-story house in Tacoma, Washington, the same one I'd just paid off. My dad was a mechanic, my mom a part-time bookkeeper at a dentist's office. They weren't bad parents growing up, just distant. I was the kid who learned to cook his own dinners and patch his own jeans while they fought about money in the living room. Lauren was their favorite. Everyone knew it. She was the cheerleader, the pretty one, the one with potential. I was the one who stayed home and fixed the leaky faucet or mowed the lawn. It didn't bother me much then. I figured love just showed up differently for each kid. When I graduated high school, I got into a trade program for HVAC repair. While Lauren went to college in California, paid for by my parents, I started working right away. I sent money home when things got tight. $200 here, $500 there. Mom would call me crying about overdue bills, and I'd wire the cash immediately. She always said, "You're our rock, Michael. You keep us afloat." That phrase used to make me proud. By 2017, I was earning solid money. I'd been promoted to lead tech at a large company. Around that time, Dad's health declined. He couldn't work as much, and they fell behind on their mortgage. One night, Mom called and said they were 2 months away from foreclosure. I didn't hesitate. I moved back home temporarily to help them manage things. The temporary stay turned into 6 years. I paid $1,200 every month directly toward the mortgage, set up through online banking. I covered utilities, repairs, even a new roof when the old one leaked. My parents thanked me every time, promised I'd inherit the house. "You'll always have a home here, son," my dad said. "When we're gone, it's yours." And I believed him. Lauren would visit occasionally, usually to show off her new handbags or complain about her stressful marketing job. She'd roll her eyes when she saw me fixing the fence or painting the porch. "You act like you own the place," she once said with a smirk. Funny thing to hear from someone who barely knew where the breaker box was. By the time COVID hit, I had paid off more than half their mortgage. When Dad had a mild stroke, I took unpaid leave to care for him. Lauren didn't visit once. Not once. But when he recovered, she posted a long Facebook tribute about how hard it was watching Dad suffer. That was my first quiet moment of resentment. I remember scrolling through her post and realizing she wasn't just their favorite anymore. She was rewriting history. Fast forward to last spring. The final mortgage balance came up during dinner. I had been saving to knock it out completely, finally free them from debt. Mom got teary, hugged me, and said, "You're such a blessing. We'll never forget what you've done." But they did forget, or maybe they never meant it in the first place. The day I wired that last payment, something in their tone had already shifted. I didn't see it then. I see it now. There was relief in their eyes, but not gratitude, more like finality. Like a deal had just closed. And 3 weeks later, they made it official. By transferring the deed to Lauren and throwing me out of the only home I'd ever known. But I wasn't done being the wallet. Not yet, because I'd kept receipts. Every transfer, every check, every repair invoice, all neatly organized. And my lawyer said 5 words that gave me back my power. "This isn't generosity. It's fraud." Once the shock started to fade, the anger took over. The kind of slow, simmering anger that keeps you awake at night replaying every conversation, every fake "thank you," every lie that sounded like love. I didn't contact them for 2 weeks. I stayed at a friend's apartment, worked double shifts, and gathered paperwork like my life depended on it. Bank statements, wire transfers, invoices for the new roof, the kitchen remodel, the HVAC replacement. I had kept everything, partly because I'm organized, partly because I never trusted my mom's version of, "We'll pay you back later." When I finally went to see a lawyer, I expected him to laugh me out of the room. He didn't. After reviewing everything, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You're not out of options, Michael. You have a clear case of unjust enrichment and possibly a claim for a constructive trust." I didn't know what those words meant, but they sounded like hope. He explained that since I'd made consistent payments directly to the mortgage company, I could claim a financial interest in the property, especially since my parents and sister had acted in bad faith. He told me we could file a lawsuit demanding restitution or partial ownership. That same day, I opened a new folder on my laptop called Reclaiming Home. It wasn't about revenge yet, not consciously. It was about justice, about not letting them erase me like I never existed. When my parents finally reached out, it wasn't to apologize. Mom texted, "Please stop being dramatic. You have your whole life ahead of you. Let's not ruin the family over paperwork." Over paperwork. A week later, Lauren called. Her tone was syrupy sweet. "Hey, Mikey," she said. "Mom's really worried about you. Maybe you should see someone, you know? Get some therapy. This anger isn't healthy." I bit my tongue. I wanted to scream that she'd stolen my home, but instead I said, "Lauren, you do realize I paid every cent of that mortgage, right?" She laughed. "You're delusional. Mom said you insisted on paying. That was your choice. Gifts don't come with ownership, sweetie." That word, sweetie, hit me like a slap. 2 days later, I saw pictures on Facebook. My childhood bedroom, repainted pale blue. New furniture. New curtains. Lauren had moved in. The caption read, "Home sweet home, red heart, so grateful for family and fresh starts." Hundreds of likes. Comments full of, "You deserve it, girl," and "so happy for you." That's when something inside me broke clean in half. I printed the pictures, every one of them, and I started documenting the timeline, payments, transfers, texts, even those Facebook posts. My lawyer told me to stay quiet publicly, but that didn't mean I couldn't prepare. Then, about 3 weeks later, I got a call from my dad. He said the lawyer's notice had arrived at their door and asked if we could settle this quietly. He sounded nervous, like he knew they'd gone too far. But before I could even respond, my mom grabbed the phone and said coldly, "If you think you can bully us, you're wrong. We'll destroy you in court if we have to." I remember hanging up and sitting in my car, hands shaking. Not from fear, but from the first real taste of resolve. Because I'd realized something important. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about respect. About being treated like a disposable ATM by the people who raised me. And I wasn't going to let that stand. But I had no idea that before the case even began, I'd discover a betrayal far bigger and far colder than the deed transfer. It started with a phone call from an insurance company that should never have been calling me at all. The call came on a Wednesday morning while I was at work. It was from a woman at Everstate Life Insurance. She said she was following up on a beneficiary update request for my name. I almost hung up, thinking it was a scam, but then she said, "This concerns policy number 4897 under the account of Robert and Helen Carson. Your parents." My parents. She went on, "We received paperwork changing the primary beneficiary from you to Lauren Carson last month. But since your signature appears on an earlier co-beneficiary form, we're required to notify you of the change." I just stood there, speechless. I didn't even know my parents had a life insurance policy with me on it. "Wait," I said slowly. "Are you saying I was listed as a beneficiary?" "Yes," she replied. "Until recently, you and your sister were equal beneficiaries. Now it's just her." That night, I pulled up every old file I could find, searching for any mention of it. Tax papers, old mail, insurance statements. Nothing. They'd hidden it completely. So I called my mom. She didn't even sound surprised. "Oh, that," she said, almost laughing. "We decided it made more sense for everything to go to Lauren. She has children. You don't." "You didn't even tell me," I said. "It's our money, Michael. You've gotten enough from us over the years." That line nearly made me laugh. I'd given them over $200,000, and somehow I was the leech. Then something clicked in my head, the timing. The policy change happened the same week they transferred the deed. They weren't just cutting me out of the house. They were rewriting their entire estate to erase me completely. I called my lawyer, who told me the life insurance change wasn't illegal, but definitely strategic. Could show intent, evidence that they'd planned to remove me financially across the board. He said, "They're consolidating assets, probably to make sure you can't claim anything later." That's when the fury turned cold. It wasn't spontaneous betrayal anymore. It was premeditated. But I still didn't know the full extent of it. Not until a week later, when I bumped into my parents' old neighbor, Mrs. Walker. She'd lived across the street for 30 years, practically a second mom to me. When I told her what had happened, she looked horrified. "Oh, honey," she whispered, glancing around like someone might hear. "You don't know, do you?" "Know what?" I asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Your parents refinanced the house twice after you started paying. Lauren handled the paperwork. I saw the appraiser come by both times." I froze. "They refinanced? When?" 2019 and 2022, she said. "They said they were consolidating debt, but I remember your mom bragging that Lauren was getting them financially organized." That night, I pulled every property record I could from the Pierce County website. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transactions. There it was, 2 new loans, both under my parents' names, signed by Lauren as financial power of attorney. The balance of those refinances? $180,000. They'd refinanced the home, the same one I'd been paying off, and pocketed the cash. All while I was sending mortgage payments every month, thinking I was buying my family's security. It hit me like a physical blow. The house was never the goal. I wasn't helping them survive. I was paying into their con. I remember sitting on my bed in that cheap studio apartment, staring at the printed records, my pulse pounding so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. That was the night I stopped being their son. That was the night I started being their reckoning. I stopped sleeping normally after that. Every night I sat hunched over my laptop, surrounded by piles of papers, coffee cups, and takeout boxes. I wasn't crying anymore, I was calculating. I started a spreadsheet that listed every payment I'd ever made toward the mortgage, utilities, and home improvements. I even tracked inflation-adjusted values and cross-referenced them with county property records. When I was done, the total came to $243,612.38. Every cent documented. My lawyer said that was a hell of a number. He told me we could pursue equitable interest, meaning that even though my name wasn't on the deed, I had contributed enough to be legally recognized as a co-owner. It wasn't a slam dunk, but it was strong, especially with proof of the refinances. He said something else that stuck with me. They used you like an investment, Michael. You didn't lose a house, you funded theirs. So I started planning two parallel paths, the legal one and the personal one. The legal path was methodical. I filed the lawsuit, gathered witnesses, and included the refinance discovery as part of a fraud claim. My lawyer subpoenaed the bank records tied to those loans, both bearing my sister's signature. But the personal plan was colder, slower. I wanted them to feel it. I opened a new email address under a generic name and sent a packet of documents, the refinance records, the deed transfer, and the life insurance changes, to my parents' church board, their HOA, and my sister's employer's HR department. No commentary, no accusations, just raw documents with highlighted sections. Then I sat back and watched. It didn't take long. 2 days later, my mom called me at work, her voice trembling. "What did you do, Michael?" she demanded. "The pastor just called us. They're asking questions." I said nothing, just silence. Then my dad's voice came on the line, low and furious. "You're trying to ruin us." I finally said, "No, Dad. I'm just showing people who you really are." I hung up before he could answer. By that weekend, Lauren's social media accounts were locked. Her company profile vanished from the marketing firm's website. A friend who still followed her said the comments on her last post were brutal. People asking about family fraud and stealing from her brother. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not yet. Just a dull calm. But I wanted more than reputation damage. I wanted accountability. So I worked with my lawyer to file a formal fraud report with the state attorney's office. It included bank records showing where the refinance money went, Lauren's personal account. He said there was a good chance it could trigger an investigation. Meanwhile, my parents started reaching out again. First came guilt. "You're tearing apart this family." Then fear. "You'll lose in court and be broke." And finally, the classic threat. "We'll tell everyone you're unstable." That's when I made my final move, one that guaranteed they couldn't spin the story anymore. I requested a forensic accounting report from the mortgage lender, showing 5 years of direct payments from my account. My lawyer told me once that report was filed, it'd be almost impossible for them to deny my financial stake in the property. We filed it. The next week, their attorney called mine to discuss settlement options. It was working. But before we even reached court, something new surfaced. Something even my lawyer hadn't expected. A record from the refinance paperwork showing why my sister had power of attorney in the first place. The document had a single line that changed everything. It said, "Temporary power of attorney granted due to cognitive impairment of borrower." Except the borrower wasn't my dad. It was my mom. And the date? 2 years before the betrayal. When my lawyer showed me the refinance documents in his office, I stared at that one line for a full minute, reading it over and over again. Temporary power of attorney granted due to cognitive impairment of borrower. Borrower, Helen Carson. My mother couldn't wrap my head around it. She wasn't senile. She wasn't losing memory. She was manipulative, sure, but she'd never seemed impaired. I asked my lawyer if it could be a clerical error. He said it wasn't. The document was notarized, signed, and filed with the county. She was declared mentally incompetent, he said carefully. at least on paper, to allow Lauren to sign financial documents on her behalf. I felt my throat close up. So, my sister got control because Mom was declared unfit? He nodded. Yes, which means if that declaration wasn't legitimate, if your mother was of sound mind, it's fraud. And if it was legitimate, then your father knowingly let your sister control everything while your mother was impaired. Either way, it was rotten. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The refinance, the timing, the deed transfer, the life insurance changes. Every step had Lauren's fingerprints all over it. My parents had gone along, but she'd been the one with the power, literally. So I started digging deeper. I contacted the notary listed on the refinance paperwork. She remembered the appointment clearly. Oh yes, she said. That was strange. The daughter, Lauren, handled most of it. The mother barely spoke. The father just nodded. Then I asked a question that changed everything. Where did the signing take place? In the daughter's office, she said. Not at their home. That's when it all clicked. Lauren had orchestrated everything. She'd convinced them to sign over limited power of attorney under the pretense of simplifying finances after Dad's stroke. Once she had that authority, she refinanced the house twice, moved the money into her own account, and later talked them into transferring the deed for family reasons. The whole thing, years in the making, had been her plan. And when I'd paid off the final mortgage balance, all I'd done was clear her slate. I called my parents that night. I didn't yell. I just asked my mom quietly, "Did you know Lauren had power of attorney over you when the refinance happened?" She hesitated. I could hear her breathing hard. Then she said, "Your sister handles those things. She's better with money." Then I asked, "Did you know that declaration said you were cognitively impaired?" Silence. Finally, she whispered, "Lauren said it was just paperwork. Nothing real." That was it, the confirmation. Lauren had lied to her own mother, faked a medical pretext to take control, and used it to drain their home equity and cut me out completely. I told my lawyer everything. He went pale. "This is criminal," he said. "We're talking potential felony fraud, false representation, possibly elder abuse if your mother didn't understand what she signed." He immediately added those claims to the civil case and contacted a county investigator. Meanwhile, word spread. My parents' church stopped returning Lauren's calls. Their neighbors whispered. For the first time, my parents didn't look defiant when I saw them. They looked afraid. Because they were finally realizing the truth too. They hadn't betrayed me out of cruelty. They'd been played. And the person who'd done it, who'd orchestrated all of it from the shadows, wasn't my parents at all. It was my sister. And when I finally confronted her face to face, I saw something in her eyes I'll never forget. She didn't look guilty. She looked proud. I confronted Lauren at a cafe near downtown Tacoma, the same place she used to brag about her high-paying clients. I didn't tell her I was coming to accuse her. I just said we needed to talk about Mom and Dad. She showed up in a pressed white blouse, hair perfect, sunglasses perched on her head like she was too busy for this. When I slid the printed refinance documents across the table, she didn't even flinch. I asked, "You want to explain why you declared Mom mentally impaired to get power of attorney?" She smirked and leaned back. "I didn't declare her anything. I just filled out what the bank needed." "You forged her consent," I said quietly. Her smile twitched. "You can't prove that." I stared at her. "You drained 2 refinances into your own account, made me pay off the balance, then took the deed. That's not just greedy, Lauren. That's psychotic." She set her coffee down and looked me dead in the eyes. "You really don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" She leaned forward, voice calm, even warm. "You were never supposed to be part of this family's future. Mom and Dad just kept you around because you were useful. You think they'd rather live with you, a single HVAC tech, than have a daughter who could actually give them grandkids and status? Please." I sat frozen. Then she said, almost tenderly, "When you started paying off the mortgage, I realized something. You were finally worth something. You could fix their mistake. You could pay off my inheritance." She smiled again, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "So yeah, I made it official. I handled the finances, made sure the house stayed in my name. You were just helping." Her tone shifted, colder now. Do you have any idea how many times they complained about you behind your back? About how you'd never leave? How you made the house feel small? You think they cared about your sacrifices? They were relieved when I took control. I couldn't speak. My chest was tight, my hands shaking under the table. She finished her coffee, stood up, and leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume. You're not the victim here, Michael. You were just a convenient solution. And honestly, you should thank me. Without me, you'd still be stuck in that house pretending you had a family. Then she walked out, heels clicking, not even glancing back. I sat there for a long time, staring at the untouched coffee. Her words felt like knives, but they also clarified everything. It wasn't about money or property or even jealousy. It was about control. She'd built her whole identity around being the successful one, the savior. I was her shadow, the family's quiet workhorse. She couldn't stand that my sacrifice had made me more essential than her. So she rewrote the story. She made herself the hero again. And my parents, desperate to stay in her good graces, let her do it. Maybe they even believed it, that I was just the helper, not the son who'd saved their home. That night I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat on my bed, calm for the first time in months, and realized the most chilling truth of all. She hadn't done this for money. She'd done it to win. And the only way to hurt someone like Lauren is to make sure everyone she needs to impress sees her lose. The lawsuit took 8 months. 8 long, grinding months of depositions, subpoenas, and courtroom stairs that could have cut glass. My parents sat behind Lauren at every hearing, quiet, pale, ashamed, but still behind her. They never once spoke to me, not until the day the verdict came down. The judge ruled that my financial contributions weren't gifts, as my sister claimed, but substantial equitable interest. In plain English, it meant I was owed part of that house, a big part. Then came the bombshell. When the investigator presented the refinance records, the judge called it clear, deliberate misrepresentation. The fake power of attorney, the fabricated impairment clause, the transfers into her account, all of it. He didn't just side with me. He ordered the house sold, with 60% of the proceeds going to me, 30% to my parents, as original owners, and the remaining 10% withheld under review pending criminal investigation against Lauren for fraudulent misrepresentation and elder abuse. Lauren screamed, literally screamed in the courtroom. My mother started crying. My dad just stared at the table. I didn't say a word. When it was over, I walked out into the parking lot and breathed for what felt like the first time in a year. I had no home to go back to, not yet. But for the first time, I wasn't the wallet, the scapegoat, or the background character. I was free. But my revenge wasn't complete. A month later, when the house went on the market, I asked my realtor to list it under my LLC's name. I wanted anonymity, and I wanted control over the sale. Lauren tried to stop it, but the court order overrode her. I bought it, not for sentimental reasons, for closure. After the sale finalized, I spent one last afternoon inside. The house was empty, echoing with the ghosts of everything I'd built and lost. I stood in the kitchen, right where my mother once told me, "You were just the wallet." I whispered back, "Not anymore." Then I handed the keys to a young couple, newly married, kind people who'd fallen in love with the place. They were ecstatic. Watching them smile, I realized the house wasn't mine to hold on to. It never really was. It had been my cage, my lesson, my war zone. I took the proceeds and bought a smaller place out in Gig Harbor. Quiet, coastal, peaceful. I fixed it up myself, one wall, one repair at a time. A few months later, I heard through mutual friends that Lauren had lost her job after the investigation became public. Word spread fast. Fake POA documents and misuse of family finances aren't things you can explain away. My parents moved into a small apartment, avoiding everyone. They've tried calling, texting. I haven't answered once. I'm not angry anymore, just done. Sometimes I drive past the old house and glance at the porch light, now replaced, shining warm through the dusk. The new owners wave if they see me. They don't know the story. They don't need to. That chapter's closed. And as for my family, they taught me what loyalty really costs and what self-respect is worth. They tried to erase me from the deed, from their lives, from the story. But in the end, I took back the one thing they could never steal, my name. Because the wallet doesn't forget. It learns. And this time, it keeps the receipts.